You think eating a big bowl of raw spinach every single day is protecting your aging heart. But if you are over 60, that habit, that one innocent, well-meaning habit, could be silently accelerating arterial damage in ways that won't show up on your routine blood work until the damage is already done. I'm Dr. James Cole. I've spent over 15 years working exclusively with patients over 60, and what I am about to share with you is something I wish every physician had time to explain in a standard 15-minute appointment, but they don't. So I'm going to do it right here. In this video, I will walk you through the 3 so-called healthy vegetables you need to stop eating the way you're eating them right now. And then I will reveal the 3 vegetables backed by clinical research that can actively repair arterial damage, lower your blood pressure, and reduce cardiac inflammation, some of them working while you sleep. Stay with me through to the end. Because the number 1 heart-healing vegetable on this list is one that almost no one over 60 is using correctly, and the research behind it stopped me cold the first time I read it. If you're ready, let's begin. Before we get into the specific vegetables, I need to give you 30 seconds of biology, because once you understand what's happening inside your body after 60, the rest of this video will make complete sense. After 60, 4 things happen to your cardiovascular system that most people are never told about. Your arterial walls lose flexibility. Think of a brand new garden hose, pliable, smooth, easy to bend. Now imagine that same hose left out in the sun for 20 years, stiff, brittle, cracked. That is what is happening to your arteries gradually every single year after 60. Second, the endothelium, that's the paper-thin inner lining of every blood vessel in your body, becomes more vulnerable to inflammation. When it gets inflamed, it becomes sticky. Plaque starts to adhere to the walls. This is how blockages begin. Third, your body produces significantly less nitric oxide after 60. Nitric oxide is the molecule that tells your blood vessels to relax and widen. Less of it means narrower vessels, higher pressure, and a heart that has to work harder with every single beat. And fourth, your kidneys become less efficient at flushing certain compounds, particularly sodium. What your body handled effortlessly at 45 now lingers in your bloodstream and quietly drives your blood pressure up. Here's why all of this matters for what you eat. Vegetables that were completely harmless to you in your 40s can now trigger or worsen every single one of these mechanisms. The same foods, your older body, a completely different response, and the food industry has not updated its advice to reflect that. Neither have most general medicine guidelines. That ends today. Harmful vegetable number 3. And I know this one is going to make some of you push back immediately, so stay with me, because the distinction I'm about to make is critical. Fresh tomatoes are genuinely heart-healthy. They contain lycopene, a powerful antioxidant shown to reduce arterial inflammation. I am not here to take tomatoes away from you, but canned and processed tomatoes? That is a different food entirely. And most Americans over 60 consume tomatoes almost exclusively in canned form, in sauces, soups, stews, and pasta dishes. Here is the problem. A single half-cup serving of canned diced tomatoes contains between 300 and 500 milligrams of sodium. That's before you cook it into anything, before you add a second serving, before the salt already in your other ingredients. Now here's what that sodium does inside an aging body. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that adults over 65 excrete excess sodium approximately 30% less efficiently than younger adults. 30% slower. That sodium stays in your bloodstream. It pulls water into your blood vessels like a sponge. Your blood pressure climbs, and your heart, which is already working harder because of those stiff, less flexible arteries, is now forced to pump against even greater resistance. Over months, over years, this leads to a condition called left ventricular hypertrophy. That's where the main pumping chamber of your heart actually thickens and enlarges from the chronic strain. It is a serious cardiac risk factor, and it is quietly connected to a bowl of pasta sauce eaten 3 nights a week. But wait, it gets worse. Most canned tomatoes are still packaged in BPA-lined cans, and because tomatoes are highly acidic, they leach more BPA from that lining than almost any other canned product. A 2021 study found measurable associations between BPA exposure and increased arterial stiffness, specifically in adults over 60. So you're getting the sodium hit and the BPA hit every single time you open that can. The fix is simple. Eat fresh tomatoes whenever possible. When fresh isn't practical, look for tomatoes packaged in glass jars or BPA-free cartons, specifically labeled low sodium. That one swap protects your heart without removing one of nature's genuinely beneficial foods. And now, let's talk about the vegetable that is going to surprise you far more. Harmful vegetable number 2. And I want you to brace yourself because this is the one that blindsides almost every health-conscious patient over 60 I've ever seen. Raw spinach, consumed daily in large quantities, is one of the most quietly damaging habits for the aging cardiovascular system. Here is the mechanism. Spinach is extraordinarily high in oxalates. In a younger body, the kidneys process oxalates without issue. But after 60, that filtration slows. And elevated oxalate levels in the blood have been directly linked to vascular calcification. That's the process where calcium deposits begin forming inside your arterial walls, hardening and narrowing them from the inside out. Imagine your arteries slowly turning from flexible tubing into something closer to concrete pipes. That is what chronic oxalate buildup contributes to. A study published in Frontiers in Aging found that adults over 60 with chronically high dietary oxalate intake had measurably higher rates of arterial calcification than those with moderate intake. And the researchers specifically flagged daily raw spinach consumption as a significant contributing factor in their study group. But oxalates aren't the only issue. Spinach is very high in vitamin K1. Now, K1 has its benefits, but here is what almost no one talks about. When you consume very large amounts of K1 every single day, it can crowd out vitamin K2. And K2 is the form that actively keeps calcium out of your arteries and directs it safely to your bones where it belongs. Too much K1 from daily raw spinach can paradoxically interfere with the one mechanism that is supposed to be protecting your arteries from calcification. And if you are one of the many adults over 60 taking a blood thinner like warfarin, inconsistent daily doses of vitamin K from spinach can make your medication nearly impossible to manage properly. Third, and this genuinely shocks almost everyone, spinach is actually high in sodium for a vegetable. A single cup of cooked spinach contains over 150 milligrams, more than almost any other leafy green. I want to tell you about Patricia. Patricia was a 71-year-old retired school teacher from Minneapolis. Sharp woman, careful about her health. She came to my office puzzled by her recent echocardiogram results. Her cardiologist had noted early signs of arterial stiffening that simply didn't match her otherwise excellent lifestyle. She exercised. She didn't smoke. She ate what she described with complete conviction as an extraordinarily clean diet. I asked her to walk me through a typical day of eating. Breakfast, a green smoothie with 2 full cups of raw spinach every single morning. Lunch, a spinach salad at least 4 days a week. She was consuming massive quantities of raw spinach every day, completely convinced it was one of the best things she could do for her body. I explained the oxalate issue, the K1 and K2 dynamic, and I suggested she dramatically reduce her raw spinach and replace it with cooked spinach twice a week, rotating in other greens on the remaining days. 4 months later, Patricia came back to my office. She said, "Doctor, my cardiologist called me to ask what I had changed. He said my latest imaging showed measurable improvement in arterial flexibility. This wasn't a miracle. This was her body responding to the removal of a chronic stressor she never knew existed. The fix is straightforward. Limit raw spinach to 2 or 3 servings per week. When you do eat it, light cooking reduces the oxalate content significantly. And rotate your leafy greens, arugula, romaine, beet greens, especially arugula. And I will tell you exactly why arugula belongs in a category completely of its own in just a few minutes. But first, the most damaging vegetable of all 3, and this one will genuinely catch you off guard. Harmful vegetable number 1, white potatoes, parsnips, rutabaga, specifically consumed in the evening hours by adults over 60 with any degree of blood sugar irregularity. Now, I want to be precise here because potatoes are not inherently bad for your heart. They contain potassium, which is actually cardiac protective. What I'm talking about is the timing of high glycemic vegetables in an aging body. And the research on this is something I consider genuinely alarming. After 60, your cells become progressively more resistant to insulin. This is a normal part of aging. It means that when you eat high glycemic carbohydrates, your blood sugar spikes higher and stays elevated longer than it did when you were younger. And this is true even if you have never been diagnosed with diabetes or prediabetes. Your morning fasting glucose may look perfectly normal. The problem happens at night. When you eat a baked potato or a bowl of roasted parsnips at 7 in the evening, your blood sugar spikes significantly. But at night, your physical activity is essentially zero. Your muscle cells, which are the primary consumers of blood glucose during movement, are not available to absorb that sugar, so it stays in your bloodstream for hours. Researchers now have a name for this: nocturnal glucose elevation. A 2022 study in the Journal of Applied Physiology found that adults over 60 who showed even moderate nocturnal glucose spikes had arterial inflammation markers comparable to those seen in early-stage diabetics. These were people whose morning blood work looked completely normal. Their doctors saw nothing alarming, but what was happening to their arterial lining between 7 p.m. and 2 a.m., that was a completely different story. And that damage accumulates month after month, year after year, without a single warning on a standard lab report. The solution is not to stop eating potatoes, it's to time them correctly. Eat higher glycemic vegetables at lunch, when you have the entire afternoon of movement ahead of you to metabolize the glucose. Save your evenings for the healing vegetables I'm about to share with you right now. And this is the part of the video I've genuinely been looking forward to. Healing vegetable number 3, beets. And more specifically, beet greens, which most people throw directly into the trash without a second thought. Beets are extraordinarily rich in dietary nitrates. When you eat them, your saliva and gut bacteria convert those nitrates into nitric oxide, the same molecule your body is producing less and less of after 60. Beets don't just slow further decline, they actually help restore nitric oxide levels that aging has already depleted. A study found that adults over 65 who consumed beets or concentrated beet juice daily experienced an average reduction in systolic blood pressure of 8 to 10 points within just 2 weeks. That is a reduction comparable to what many blood pressure medications achieve, without a prescription, without side effects, without cost. Now, the greens. 1 cup of cooked beet greens contains over 1,000 milligrams of potassium. Potassium is the cardiovascular system's great counterbalance. It neutralizes the blood pressure-raising effects of sodium and helps maintain proper heart rhythm. Data from studies tracking over 90,000 adults for more than 12 years found that higher potassium intake was associated with a 38% lower risk of stroke and a 24% reduction in coronary heart disease events. And almost everyone buying beets at the grocery store throws the greens away. Next time you buy whole beets, keep the greens. Sauté them with a little garlic and olive oil. You have just made one of the most heart-protective side dishes that exists. Healing vegetable number 2. And before you tune out because you've heard about garlic 100 times, I need you to stay with me. Because the way you are almost certainly preparing garlic right now is eliminating the majority of its cardiac benefit before it ever reaches your plate. Garlic contains a compound called allicin. Allicin is only released when garlic is crushed or chopped. It triggers an enzymatic reaction between 2 components that are kept completely separate inside the whole clove. When that reaction completes, allicin has been shown in dozens of clinical trials to measurably reduce blood pressure, lower LDL oxidation, reduce platelet clumping, and fight arterial inflammation. Every major driver of cardiac disease in older adults, addressed by a single food. A meta-analysis of 29 clinical trials found that regular garlic consumption lowered systolic blood pressure by an average of 8.4 points and diastolic by 5.5 points, results that rivaled standard antihypertensive medications in patients with elevated readings. But here is where almost everyone goes wrong. When you chop garlic and immediately throw it into a hot pan, you destroy the enzyme responsible for creating allicin before the reaction can complete. The cardiovascular benefit is largely gone. The correct method is this. Crush or finely chop your garlic. Set it aside at room temperature for 10 minutes. Let the enzymatic reaction finish. Then cook with it, or better yet, add it raw to your food just before serving. That 10-minute rest changes everything. I want to tell you about James. James was a 78-year-old retired firefighter from Philadelphia. He came to my clinic after what his cardiologist called a cardiac warning event. Not a full heart attack, but enough to frighten him and his entire family. He came with his wife, Margaret. She held his hand through the entire appointment. I walked them through several dietary changes, and garlic, prepared correctly, was one I emphasized repeatedly. 3 months later, James came back for his follow-up. His blood pressure had improved enough that his cardiologist was already discussing the possibility of eventually reducing one of his medications. Margaret came with him that day too. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Doctor, I have my husband back. He's out in the garden again. He went to our grandson's baseball game last weekend." And James looked at me and said, "I just wish someone had told me about the garlic thing 30 years ago. It is never too late to start." And now, the #1 heart-healing vegetable for adults over 60. I have been building toward this for the entire video, and it genuinely deserves its own moment. Healing vegetable #1, arugula. I know. When I tell my patients that arugula is the single most powerful vegetable for senior heart health based on the current clinical literature, most of them look at me like I've said something absurd. Arugula feels like a trendy salad ingredient, a garnish, certainly not a medicine. But the science behind arugula and the aging cardiovascular system is extraordinary. And it works through not one, not two, but four distinct mechanisms happening simultaneously inside your body. First, arugula has one of the highest dietary nitrate concentrations of any whole food on Earth. Gram for gram, it actually contains more bioavailable nitrates than beet juice. Remember what we said about nitric oxide? Relaxing blood vessels, lowering blood pressure, improving circulation throughout your body? Arugula delivers this in every single serving. And unlike beet juice, it doesn't spike blood sugar, contains almost no sodium, and is extraordinarily low in oxalates, which means it avoids the arterial calcification risk we discussed with spinach entirely. Second, arugula contains high levels of glucosinolates, sulfur compounds that reduce vascular inflammation through multiple pathways. Chronic vascular inflammation is now understood to be the primary driver of atherosclerosis, the slow buildup of plaque inside your arteries. A 2022 study published in Nutrients found that glucosinolate-rich vegetables like arugula significantly reduced inflammatory markers, including C-reactive protein in adults over 65 after just 8 weeks of daily consumption. Third, arugula contains compounds that support the clearance of oxidized LDL cholesterol, the specific form of LDL that actually embeds in arterial walls and triggers plaque formation. Regular LDL is far less dangerous than the research community once believed. Oxidized LDL is the real driver, and arugula appears to help your body remove it more efficiently. Fourth, arugula is high in vitamin K2, the form that actively keeps calcium out of your arteries and directs it safely to your bones. This is the exact opposite of the K1 problem we discussed with spinach. Arugula doesn't contribute to arterial calcification, it actively works against it. And now, the study I promised you at the very beginning of this video. Researchers tracking adults over 65 found that those who consume 2 or more daily servings of high nitrate, glucosinolate-rich vegetables, of which arugula was the primary food in the highest adherence group, experienced a 42% reduction in major cardiac events over a 4-year follow-up period. 42%. Not 4, not 14. 42% reduction in major cardiac events in adults over 65. I want to tell you about Dorothy. Dorothy was a 69-year-old retired nurse from Seattle. She had spent 35 years in a hospital telling patients how to take care of themselves. She came to my office overwhelmed after her own diagnosis of early hypertension and the beginning stages of coronary artery disease. She looked at me and said something I will never forget. She said, "Doctor, I spent my whole career telling people how to take care of themselves. I have absolutely no idea how to take care of me." I put Dorothy on what I call the arugula protocol. 2 large handfuls of raw arugula every day in a simple salad, crushed garlic rested for 10 minutes, extra virgin olive oil, fresh lemon, twice a week, roasted beets on the side, nothing complicated, nothing expensive. 6 months later, Dorothy's blood pressure had dropped from 152/94 down to 130/82, with no medication changes. Her cardiologist extended her imaging follow-up from every 3 months to every 6 months because the progression had stabilized. She looked at me at that appointment and said, "Doctor, I feel like I'm finally practicing medicine on myself. And it's actually working. This is not a miracle. This is a 69-year-old woman giving her body the raw materials it needed to begin healing itself. You can do exactly the same thing. Here is your practical heart protection plan. Starting tomorrow. In the morning, skip the canned tomato products. If you make a smoothie, add 2 large handfuls of arugula. You will not taste it. Blend it with berries, a banana, and Greek yogurt. The arugula flavor disappears completely, and the cardiovascular benefit does not. At lunch, if you want higher glycemic vegetables like potatoes or parsnips, eat them now. You have the entire afternoon ahead of you to metabolize the glucose. This is the correct window for these foods. With lunch or in the afternoon, eat your arugula salad. Make it every day. Crush your garlic, rest it 10 minutes, and add it raw to the salad with extra virgin olive oil and fresh lemon. This single dish gives you 2 of the most powerful heart-healing foods on this list working together at the same time. For dinner, choose low glycemic vegetables. Roasted beets are excellent. Sautéed beet greens are exceptional. Green beans, asparagus, broccoli, cooked carrots, all excellent choices for the evening meal. 3 things you must never do. Never use garlic powder or jarred pre-minced garlic. The enzymatic activity required to produce allicin is completely gone in those products. Fresh garlic prepared correctly is an entirely different food. Never rely on daily large quantities of raw spinach as your primary leafy green. Rotate. 2 servings of cooked spinach per week is absolutely fine. Daily raw spinach in large amounts is not optimal after 60. And never buy canned tomatoes without checking sodium content and BPA status. Choose fresh whenever possible, or use BPA-free, low-sodium carton alternatives. Within 3 to 4 days of starting this protocol, many people notice improved energy, because better circulation means more efficient oxygen delivery to every cell in your body. Within 2 weeks, improvement in how the legs feel, particularly any chronic heaviness, achiness, or coldness in the lower extremities. Within 4 to 6 weeks, blood pressure readings often begin to trend lower. Within 3 months, inflammatory markers, including C-reactive protein, may show measurable improvement. Your doctor may call to ask what you changed. Here is my challenge to you. Commit to the arugula salad every single day for 30 days. Just 30 days. 1 simple salad. Add the crushed garlic rested 10 minutes. Add the olive oil and the fresh lemon. Keep a note in your phone of how you feel, your blood pressure, your energy, the feeling in your legs. Track the changes. You are not broken. Your information has been broken. Your body has been trying to heal itself this entire time. It simply needs the right raw materials to do so. Aging does not take away your body's capacity to heal. It just reminds you to be more intentional about what you put into it. If this video opened your eyes today, smash that like button right now. It helps more people over 60 find this information. Subscribe so you never miss what we share here every single week. And share this with someone you love. A parent, a spouse, a sibling, a friend. 1 click from you could genuinely change someone's heart health. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Which of these 6 vegetables surprised you the most? Was it the spinach, the nighttime potatoes, or were you genuinely shocked when I named arugula as the #1 heart healer? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one, and your response helps other viewers over 60 feel less alone as they navigate all of this. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.